The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile just made Monaco safer, but it may have also started a full paddock revolt. Because before the cars even reach the tunnel, Formula One's most famous race has been rewritten. The engine deployment is being cut back from 200 km per hour. Active aerodynamics are banned for the entire weekend. The forced pit stop rule is gone. And now every team is asking the same dangerous question. If the 2026 cars need this many restrictions just to survive Monaco, did Formula One build a future too powerful for its own calendar? Mercedes has the most to lose, because the rules attack the very weapons that made the W17 dominant. Ferrari has the most to gain, because Monaco now rewards chassis balance, mechanical grip, and driver precision, exactly where a perfect lap can change everything. McLaren and Red Bull see an opening. The drivers see risk. And the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile sees a problem it cannot ignore. This is not just a rule change. This is the first real investigation into whether the new era has gone too far. And if Mercedes falls, or Ferrari suddenly strikes, Monaco may become the race where the championship stops being predictable. Subscribe to the channel. At first, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile could defend everything with one word: safety. And in Monaco, that word is almost impossible to argue against. Because Monaco is not a normal racetrack. It is a city pretending to be a circuit. It is history wrapped in barriers. It is speed squeezed between walls, balconies, yachts, and corners that punish even the smallest mistake. On most circuits, a driver can get it slightly wrong and survive. At Monaco, slightly wrong can mean the end of the weekend. That is why, when the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile looked at the 2026 cars and saw the speeds they could reach in the most dangerous parts of Monte Carlo, it did not treat the problem like a detail. It treated it like a warning. The new cars were not just fast. They were fast in the wrong places. That is the part that changes everything. Formula One has always lived with speed. Speed is the point. Speed is the attraction. Speed is the reason the sport feels impossible from the outside. But there is a difference between speed on a wide modern straight, and speed at the exit of the Monaco tunnel, where the walls arrive faster than the mind can fully process. There is a difference between power on a circuit with runoff, and power on a narrow climb toward Casino Square, where the driver is already threading the car through a place that gives almost nothing back. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile saw that difference. And then it made the move that shook the paddock. Not one restriction. 3. Engine deployment changed. Active aerodynamics banned. The special forced pit stop rule removed. Power, aerodynamics, and strategy, all touched before the race even began. That is why teams are not treating this like a normal Monaco update. Because normal updates do not change the character of the car. Normal updates do not strip away one of the defining technologies of a new regulation era. Normal updates do not make the fastest team on the grid wonder how much of its advantage will survive the weekend. This is the first major stress test of the 2026 rules. And the first measure is the most important one to understand. Rev 1. That is the special Monaco engine mapping. It sounds small. It sounds like something only engineers would care about. But in reality, it changes how the car delivers its power at the exact speeds that matter in Monte Carlo. Under normal conditions, the electric system can keep pushing hard until much higher speeds. The car accelerates, the energy deployment keeps helping, and the driver feels that strong electric force carry the car through the faster parts of the lap. But in Monaco, that force begins fading much earlier. The derating starts at 200 km per hour. That number is the key. For a road car, 200 km per hour sounds wild. For a Formula One car, it is not the end of acceleration. It is the middle of the attack. It is a speed where the car still wants to pull, still wants to accelerate, still wants to use everything the hybrid system can give. But at Monaco, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has said, not here. Not with these walls. Not with these speeds. Not with this risk. So the car begins reducing its electric push earlier than it normally would. Imagine a sprinter charging down a hallway, then being told to ease off before reaching the narrowest doorway. The sprinter can still run. The sprinter is still fast. But the full explosion of speed is no longer allowed exactly where the danger becomes too high. That is what Rev 1 does. It is not only about slowing the cars. It is about controlling how they arrive at the most dangerous places. The tunnel exit is the clearest example. In normal Formula One language, the tunnel is iconic. It is one of the most famous images in the sport. The car disappears into shadow, the sound changes, then it bursts back into the sunlight at speed. But in 2026, that image came with a terrifying possibility. The cars could exit too fast, too close to the walls, with too little room for error. And when the wall is that close, one small instability can become a massive consequence. That is why the power restriction matters. But here is where the teams begin to revolt emotionally, even if they choose their words carefully in public. A safety measure can still change competition. And this one does. Mercedes has been the reference point of the season. The W17 has not looked strong because of one single magic trick. It has looked strong because the whole package works together. Power delivery, energy management, efficiency, straight line strength, balance, the ability to turn technology into lap time. But in Monaco, one of those weapons is being reduced. Not destroyed. Reduced. And in Formula 1, reduced can be enough. Because dominance is often built on margins. A little more drive out of a corner. A little cleaner energy deployment. A little more confidence that the car will keep pulling when the driver needs it. Take some of that away, and the dominant car does not become bad. It becomes reachable. And reachable is all rivals need. Ferrari understands that better than anyone. Before Monaco, Ferrari was not looking for Mercedes to fall apart. Ferrari was looking for a crack. And the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile may have created exactly the kind of crack Ferrari needed. Because Monaco already reduces the importance of raw power. You do not win there by simply being the fastest car in a straight line. You win by trusting the front end, rotating the car at low speed, protecting the rear tires, and brushing the walls without fear. Now, with the electric power fading earlier, the fight moves even further away from Mercedes' most obvious strengths. And toward the things Ferrari believes can matter. Chassis balance, mechanical grip, slow corner traction, driver confidence. That is why this first measure changes the mood of the weekend. Mercedes sees a limitation. Ferrari sees a chance. McLaren sees a compressed field. Red Bull sees opportunity. And every team sees the same uncomfortable truth. The 2026 cars may be so powerful in certain speed ranges that the sport now has to control them circuit by circuit. That is bigger than Monaco. Because if Monaco needs Rev 1, and Singapore is expected to fall into the same restrictive category, then teams are not just preparing for one race. They are preparing for a new kind of Formula 1, where the car's identity can change depending on where it races. That creates uncertainty. And teams hate uncertainty. They spend months building simulation models, energy maps, braking references, aerodynamic assumptions, and tire plans. They want the car to be predictable. They want the driver to know exactly what will happen when he presses the throttle, when the deployment comes in, when the power fades, when the car reaches the braking zone. Monaco now changes that feeling. The driver still has a Formula 1 car underneath him. But the power character is different. And different matters. Especially between walls. Because at Monaco, confidence is not decoration. It is lap time. A driver who trusts the car attacks the barrier. A driver who hesitates loses the lap. And with Rev 1, every driver has to rebuild that trust under the most intense conditions of the season. That is only the first shock. The second is even more symbolic. Active aerodynamics are banned for the entire Monaco weekend. Completely. No active aero in the race. No active aero in qualifying. No straight mode. No wing opening on the main straight. Nothing. The system that was supposed to define the 2026 era has been switched off at the most famous race in Formula 1. That is a huge statement. Because active aerodynamics were not a side feature. They were sold as part of the future. A smarter car. A more adaptable car. A machine that could reduce drag when speed mattered, then recover stability and downforce when cornering mattered. In simple terms, the car could change personality. Slippery on the straights. Planted in the corners. That was the idea. But Monaco has forced the sport to ask a brutal question. What happens when the future does not fit the past? Because Monaco is not designed around 2026 technology. It is designed around survival, precision, and history. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile clearly decided that letting the cars use active aero in certain parts of the lap created too much risk for too little reward. So it banned it. Fixed wings all weekend. Maximum downforce behavior. No straight line trick. No active system to create a sudden speed gain where the walls are waiting. Again, the safety logic is clear. But the competitive effect is impossible to ignore. Mercedes loses another tool. Ferrari gains another reason to believe. McLaren loses some benefit too, but still sees Mercedes pulled closer. Red Bull sees a race where chaos and compression can create openings. And the drivers see a car that behaves differently from the promise of the new era. That is where the revolt begins. Not necessarily in loud public anger, but in the questions every team starts asking behind the scenes. If active aero is too risky at Monaco, where else will it be too risky? If the most important new feature of the rules can be banned for an entire weekend, how permanent is the identity of these cars? If the governing body can remove a performance tool for safety, how do teams protect their investment in developing that tool? Those questions are dangerous because they go beyond one Grand Prix. They reach into the credibility of the regulation era itself. Formula One introduced a new concept, then immediately had to limit it at one of the sport's crown jewel events. That does not mean the decision is wrong. But it does mean the decision is huge. And now the teams have to race with the consequences. For Ferrari, the active aero ban pushes Monaco even closer to its natural strengths. Fixed high downforce, slow speed balance, mechanical grip, a car that can be trusted through tight corners, a driver willing to put the wheels close to the wall. That is Monaco. And that is why Ferrari suddenly looks dangerous. Lewis Hamilton had already said Monaco was the kind of circuit where power is not crucial, where chassis performance could give Ferrari a real chance. Now the rules support that idea. Charles Leclerc also becomes central to the entire story, because Monaco is not just another circuit for him. It is personal. It is emotional. It is a place where a perfect lap can feel like a statement to the whole sport. If Ferrari gives him a car with confidence, the restrictions could turn hope into pressure. And pressure is exactly what Mercedes has not wanted to feel this season. The third measure seems different, but it may shape the race just as much. The forced two-stop rule has been removed. In the previous Monaco experiment, the idea was to force more strategy. Make teams use more tires. Create more pit lane action. Try to break the usual pattern where overtaking is almost impossible. But the effect was limited. There was more strategy noise, but not enough real racing transformation. So now, strategy is free again. One stop. Two stops. Maybe something stranger if the race conditions allow. That sounds like freedom. But in Monaco, freedom can become a trap. Because if nobody is forced to stop twice, and overtaking is still brutally difficult, then track position becomes even more powerful. Get ahead, and you may control everything. Get stuck behind, and your speed may become useless. That means qualifying becomes more important than ever. And with the engine restricted and active aero removed, a team that qualifies out of position may not have the tools to fight back. That is where Mercedes could be vulnerable. If a Ferrari starts ahead, Mercedes may not simply drive past. If McLaren finds a clean lap, Mercedes may not easily recover. If Red Bull puts a car in the right place at the right time, the race can become uncomfortable. Monaco has always been about position. But this year, the rule package makes position feel even more powerful. That is why the investigation and the extra regulatory response have shaken the teams so deeply. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has not just asked, how do we make Monaco safe? It has also, whether intentionally or not, changed the answer to, who is Monaco likely to reward? And the answer is no longer obvious. Before these measures, Mercedes could arrive with confidence that its overall package would carry the weekend. Now, Mercedes has to prove it can win without the full expression of its usual advantage. That is a different kind of test. It is one thing to dominate when the circuit rewards your strongest tools. It is another to dominate when the governing body restricts them, the track punishes recovery, and your rivals suddenly believe the door is open. This is why the first block matters. Because it explains why the paddock is not only reacting to the rules. It is reacting to the meaning of the rules. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has revealed that the new cars can create risk profiles too extreme for Monaco if left unrestricted. That means the future of Formula One may depend on constant adjustment. Circuit by circuit. Speed zone by speed zone. Energy map by energy map. Aero mode by aero mode. For engineers, that is a challenge. For teams, that is uncertainty. For drivers, that is another layer of trust they have to rebuild. And for fans, it raises a question that will hang over the entire weekend. Are we watching the best team win on merit, or are we watching a new rule environment reshape the fight? That question is uncomfortable. But it is unavoidable now. Because if Mercedes wins, the rest of the grid has a problem. It would mean the W17 is so complete that even restrictions cannot stop it. That would make Mercedes look even stronger. But if Ferrari wins, the story changes instantly. People will ask whether Ferrari found its perfect circuit, or whether the restrictions finally exposed Mercedes. They will ask whether the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile accidentally leveled the field. They will ask whether Monaco was a safety correction, or a competitive earthquake. And if the race becomes messy, if drivers complain about the power delivery, if the lack of active aero makes overtaking worse, if strategy locks the order too early, then the governing body faces an even bigger problem.